no matter what happens. Yeah. How they will change, we don't know yet. For some of us, we're maybe a bit nervous about that. I'm one of them. Because when you put your hands in the hand of God and say, lead us, you never know where that's going to end up. See, for me, I'm moving from a ministry where I've seen much of the blessing of God. I've been blessed. I've seen a congregation be blessed by God and His presence. I've grown deeply in with the people who I have ministered to for the last 8 years, as we've explored together what God wanted us to do. And I mean that very, very sincerely. Together, we looked at it. And I've worked alongside those folk and seen God change them and bless them. I've seen Him move in people's lives in ways that gave them freedom from things that had bound them for decades. And as I say, I've also known God's blessing personally, as things have moved in ways I would not have predicted and could not have predicted. But here I am. I stand here. And next Sunday, I will stand here again and state my recognition that God has called me to come to this place. For you, you've chosen to risk adding my ministry to those who have already served here and who are already serving here. And you add my ministry to a leadership that is trying to, and has been trying to navigate this church through choppy waters, through the difficulties of the past years. Our leadership, we need your support and your encouragement as a congregation as a whole. Also adding to the ministry of Rosie, who has served this church faithfully for, I think it is something like 18 years. And still senses God's call upon her life. So it's change for all of us. We're all going to change. And we're all going to see change. And what I want to share this morning, I hope is by way of encouragement as we enter that, because change always makes us nervous. You know, the old joke. How many Baptists does it take to change a light bulb? Change? We don't know the concept, or we sometimes pretend we don't know the concept. But I hope we will be encouraged to be looking to God to see what He is going to do, what He wants to do in Ayr Baptist, that will change us to be better disciples, more people, more like the people of the way that He wants us to be. A week or two back, I listened to a story on an audiobook I have now finished it, that I was listening to as I was traveling up and down here and other places. A book it was called Adventures in Missing the Point. And in that, one of the two authors, either Tony Campolo or Brian McLaren, I'm not sure which of the two of them it was, tells a story, or something like the story. There was a certain town, and on a particular day, an announcement was made that there was going to be a race. And everybody was invited to take part in that race. And so there was much talk, much excitement about this up-and-coming race. And then on the day when the race was set to happen, the crowds began to gather to watch the race. And then just before the time set for the start of the race, one group of people gathered at the start line, all dressed in running gear, all ready to go. Then the gun went off, and there was much cheering and much encouragement by the crowd to those who were running in the race. But the cheering quickly stopped, because after a few steps, some of the runners stopped. After a few more yards of moving, others stopped, and they gathered in groups until all the runners were stopped, only some small number of yards from the starting line. And they began to talk to one another. They began to admire each other's running clothes. They began to talk about the excitement of being part of a race. And the cry from them all was something like, "But we are race runners. We have entered the race. We are racers. We are runners. We're in this race." After a while, the crowd began to drift off. They had come to see excitement. They'd come to see something that was important. But all there was a group of people congratulating one another and going nowhere. That story was told as a parable of the church. So many of the Christian church have entered the race and never got much past the starting line. We congratulate ourselves. I am saved. I'm going to heaven. One day Jesus will welcome me at the gates of heaven. And we sit around or stand around and we congratulate ourselves that we have made that decision. Now, there's nothing wrong with having made that decision. There's nothing wrong with having entered the race. But is that what it's all about? Is that the end of it? You see, those runners in our parable had lost sight of the goal. The goal was not to enter the race, but to finish the race. Not to enjoy the running of the race, but to get to the finish line, to receive the prize. I wonder if in reality we have lost any sense of what the finishing line is meant to be. If we've lost any sense of how we should be striving to get there. I think Paul had something like that in mind when he was writing to the Galatians. It is for freedom Christ has set you free. Do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Just remember that picture. Here was a group of people who had given their lives to Christ, but now they were being tempted to stop and to go back, to put their trust in a set of rights that had failed for thousands of years. And what does he say about all of that? We've read the passage, but the key verse perhaps is the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself in love. Going back to our runners again, you see, you've got the idea that now that they had faith. They were runners. They had the equipment. They crossed the line. They had faith. But they were no longer expressing it in running the race. Faith expressing itself through love. The Galatians' concern, obviously, was around circumcision. Ours is often around other things. And it will be different, perhaps different for each of us. What has stopped you? What has entered in to hamper your race? Paul is asking us. But the result is the same. Whatever it is, it has taken away our freedom. It has taken away our freedom to run that race. Something binds us up. Freedom is a most precious commodity. It is for freedom Christ has set you free, he says. It's the most precious commodity. Time and again in our Bibles, we find that God's people are captured by another, captured by an enemy, or captured by a worshipping of a pagan god, or captured by commercialism. You know, the prophets time and again attack the people for having not given a proper offering. You know, what sort of lamb is this that is spoiled? What kind of service is this that is begrudged? What kind of way is this for my people to behave? Paul's clear that the kind of freedom that Christ offered was of a different order. It was something very special. It was a freedom to be what we were created to be. Now, just listen to that carefully. It's freedom to be who we were created to be. And Bob Baxter was created to be somebody very different from anybody else here. And you were created as an individual for a purpose very different from the person sitting next to you or the person sitting in front of you. We were called and set free to be who God had created us to be. But in the end, although we were created to be something different, every one of us was created in some way in the image of God. Called by him to steward creation. Called by him to care for those around us. Called by him to serve all that he had created. Human, non-human, animal, non-animal. Everything. His creation. Created for us to care for. And that, of course, most importantly, means caring for those alongside you, to love your neighbour. Listen to Paul in Athens when he's talking to the Athenians when he was sort of under trial. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. In him we live and move and have our being. It is that we were created for. Created to be free, to be really us. Not someone else's view of us, but to be us. So how do we live out this freedom? How do we walk in that path? What is it that's keeping us from reaching the finishing line rather than standing around admiring each other's running gear, congratulating each other on having started? Do you not know, says Paul in Corinthians, do you not know that in a race all runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. See, we need to reset our eyes onto the goal, the prize that awaits us at the finishing line. But by that, I don't just mean talking about the end times or longing for revelation to be completed, or even how many precious stones or the color of them that there will be in our crown at the end. You see, because in our best moments, we know fine that our imagination cannot grasp what awaits us, cannot grasp the immensity of the goal that we are aiming for. But we just know it's going to be good. We know that it will be well beyond our imagination. And our concern is to get there. And Paul says, the only thing that counts, the only way to get there is faith expressing itself through love. You, my brothers and sisters, he says in verse 13 of Galatians 5, do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh, rather serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. This was expressed in a different way by the prophet Micah. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. That's where we are. That's the people we want to be. That's the people we long to be. How often have we heard those words of Jesus? Love one another. And then in our minds found reasons not to love this person or that person. You can't even mean, we don't say it. We're never so unspiritual as to put the words, but our action says, well, okay, I'll love one another except her or except him because they're wrong or whatever. You see, and starting next week, as we covenant together to be the kind of people that God calls us to be. And that phrase comes again and again and again in the covenant. Not promising to be that person, but promising together to seek to be that kind of person. We come to that to make a new start. I guess there's a few questions that maybe we need to meditate on this week. Have I stopped running the race? Am I sitting on my feet up? Do I need to learn to love again? Am I acting justly? Am I loving mercy? Am I walking humbly with God? We're going to move straight into communion.